Welcome to Heart Change You live stream, except this week isn't live stream, it's being recorded, so you won't be able to jump in and ask questions on today's event. We're doing a special program today, taking some testimonies. One of the things that we do here at Live Free Ministries and Heart Change You is the whole idea of retreats. We do one-day retreats, and we also do weekend retreats. We recently had a retreat that was called Made Whole. It takes the idea of inner healing, of really working through those wounds and the many things that we deal with on the inside, and hopefully working them through and giving us a foundation to be made whole. So today we have two different guests with us to start off, and then we'll actually be trading out with some more guests. But we have two guests with us who were at the retreat. So often I get the question, it's like, so what do you do at these things? You know, it's the idea of going in for a weekend. And I always jokingly say, well, you get to hear me preach for 10 hours or something like that, just to, it's a joyful sound, to be able to come to these retreats and to do that. But I want to just ask about that, just an overall impression, because it is about coming and literally spending the weekend with God is what I say. And whether that's prayer, worship, whatever it is, it really is a time to be immersed. And so I want to just start there with an overall impression, maybe a little bit of a comment about that, seemingly like you're there for hours. Are you kidding me? Just kind of give me an overall impression of what it was like, what the weekend was like in terms of its feel, those kinds of things. Roxana, do you want to start us off?
It was an amazing weekend for me, just to be able to be around other people. And we've discussed a lot of empath stuff that goes on with me. And it was amazing. I could never explain it the way you did in words after I stepped back from coming up and briefly giving testimony. But when I went back to sit down, it all just made so much sense, because I call it keying, that's my own word, on somebody else's feeling or emotion, and then they'd go to speak about, and it was like, okay, I could feel what was going on with them, but being able to do that when they were done talking, it would actually pick up something that I had gone through, or it would immediately trigger one of those, okay, I could link it to my own events and almost kind of, as you said, be able to experience it more so with having the help of others than I would be able to do on my own.
What would you say was kind of a net impact of the weekend for you? In other words, I came out of the weekend with what?
Well, it was an amazing weekend. Mitch and I both did our baptisms over the weekend, which was fantastic. And, really having sit down to us beforehand and talk and explain, the whole process and the meaning behind, and set the frame of mind for it. And so, it was an amazing high weekend for me. I know you'd said it was kind of more of a mellow experience kind of from group, but it was not a mellow experience for me. But it was extremely joyful, which is strange. But when I kind of pick up on other people's emotions, though, it helps me relate. And it's kind of like that more than one praying, it's like, okay, I can speak to God as they are as well. And, I had a great weekend with connection.
When you mention mellow, the bar is set high, so to speak. Mm-hmm. There's always a great level of intensity, prayer, seeing lives change. It's just amazing weekends. Mitch, tell us a little bit of your overall impression.
Overall, it was great. There was really a lot of things that I took out of it. It was really slow at first. Things were really calm, which was unlike the other retreat that we had went to, where everything was just, happy joy.
Yeah, the first retreat that you went to, and she did. Roxana doesn't have that.
I was there.
Oh, okay. You were both.
I just barely gotten here.
The first one, it was like it hit fast, so to speak. We were into intense prayer almost immediately. So yes.
Yeah. So it was more of like a toolbox retreat. You're kind of digging through your file cabinet, and you've got each sections, and I was able to depict mine. And after that, I got baptized, And shortly after my baptism, we were in class, and we ended up, you had people come up for prayer, and you told me that I already prayed for you. I'm not sure what I'm missing here. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. It was that I wasn't listening, and it was the voice of God speaking through to you to me. And shortly after that, I went to the auditorium that was in the other building, and I went all the way to the front, and I dropped to my knees. I asked God and prayed to heal my broken heart and to guide me for each and everything that He's trying to show me.
So you ended up with a genuine healing experience
Oh.
that was powerful.
Absolutely.
When you say that, can you give any quantification of after I walked away from the retreat, I felt or I experienced what then?
Well, I'll give a little bit of testimony here. Shortly after coming back home to the retreat, there was a gentleman in our house that was having a hard time, and he had went out, and he was supposed to be at the retreat, but he decided to drink instead. And because of his actions, we took steps in the program needed. Being said that, I asked him, have you leaned on God any? And he said, no, I'm just really frustrated. I'm mad at myself. And he was in tears. I said, hold on a second. I sat him down on the couch and I opened my book up to Romans and stuff that I'd previously highlighted when I was having a really difficult time with things. And it was just God speaking through to me, to him. And I think it really opened his eyes a little bit. And I told him, I was like, this isn't the end of the world. I've been in your shoes. This is a stepping stone for you to get better. Sometimes we have to lose everything to realize what we really have. And sometimes leaning on God as our last resort is something that we really have to do as addicts.
You mentioned tools. Is there any particular tool that you came away with?
Listening, being patient. I've realized that as addicts, we want that quick fix no matter what it is. We want that quick fix all the time, even when it's, trying to lean on God a little bit. That's not how the spirit realm works. The spirit realm is in its own time frame. So
That's a great statement. And many times people try to force things, and generally, if you're trying to force it, it's not going to happen. So that's a great response. Roxana, what else would you like to bring? Just that was a highlight.
For me, it was just a firm explanation and understanding of things that, I've spent a lifetime trying to, trial and error and going about, how I am different and, have gone through the explanations on paper, bipolar 1, but I know spiritually, everything, when I gained that diagnosis, it was the same point in time where God really started speaking into, but I've always been different and had to deal with the other kids not liking me or, and just had to focus on how to, adjust to being around, and living civilization and others. And my trial and errors have gotten me a long ways, but the weekend for me just really put links together and understanding that filled in those little bit of gaps that was like, this makes sense because it's super hard. I actually, as you explained it, you really need people to be able for me to experience or even walk through what I already have experienced.
One of the key concepts that I teach in the Made Whole area is rest. It's the idea of, yes, you can have the prayer event, you can have the healing event, but ultimately you have to step into a place where you live it over an extended period of time. As I listen to you, it sounds like you gained some understanding to where you can more likely what I call rest, i.e. you can step into a place that I'm able to live this on an ongoing basis. That's where the concept of made whole happens. I actually step into that. Any other things you want to add in terms of made whole and how What did you learn that might help you rest, live in a lifestyle that's going to be more consistent?
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's absolutely the being around others and, being undercovering and having that trust. And especially with being in the program now for like 4 months, I know the people around me, and it's so much easier for me to pick up on things. And it's okay for me to speak to them or ask them or say, like, hey, this is the feeling or emotion that I'm getting. Is that right? So I can kind of be able to tell the difference with everyone on that whole, is this mine or is it not mine?
The two keywords, safe, trust, you highlighted those, and hopefully coming out of that, those have increased in you. It gives you a greater confidence for life, and it does move you towards being made whole.
Well, yeah, and for me, I mean, it's, God came into my life long before I knew it was God. So, I mean, if somebody would have told me 6 years ago when my life really kind of started hitting rock bottom and he stepped in, I mean, God was the last person I expected it to be. But I didn't seek for what it was. I just knew it was there. So really, I mean, this program, I knew nothing of, hadn't really been taught anything about religion or who or what God was, but the approach you take with those things, especially I'm very intellectual and have to have knowledge and stuff to go along with it. But yeah, I mean, I know there's no other place that I could gain that the way I have here.
I might break down ideas a little bit. I do go there.
Yeah.
Mitch, anything else you would say just in terms of learning to rest, learning to walk in a lifestyle that you gained?
I actually took yesterday off of work to get into scripture a little bit, believe it or not. It was, I opened my book, I started reading Revelations 1, chapters 1 and 2, and I just stopped there. And I was able to actually rest a little bit during the day. And so it was kind of cool to see the power of God working through me. So God's definitely working through us in this program, so it's pretty cool.
Well, the retreat was called Made Whole, and the idea is not for a quick, immediate fix, but it's tools for a lifestyle that you can go forward. Thank the two of you for coming in. We're actually going to trade some people out and get a few other testimonies. Thank you guys for joining us.
A few moments later.
We're continuing this special edition of HCU Livestream, which is not live today. We have some special guests in studio. We're talking about the retreat Made Whole. And Rafe, it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
And Jossie, it's excellent to have you with us as well.
Well, thank you for having me.
Jossie, did you have an overall impression of the retreat? In other words, when I came away, either one of two things. Either going in, I expected, and this is what it was actually like, or when I came away from it, this is what it was actually like for me.
Well, what I expected was from the last retreat, which was like high energy. The Holy Spirit was really in the room, and we were exhausted afterwards. This time it was more of a mellow, easy tone kind of retreat that kind of energized my spirit, and I went away with it with really a lot of energy.
It's kind of neat in terms of what we talked about actually with the previous guests, just the tools they talked about a little bit. Rafe, give you a chance just to, what impression did you walk away with?
Well, walking in, I had all these expectations that I'm going to be receiving instant healing. I have an instinct that I think I can heal myself. So I'm thinking, if I say these certain things, if I do these certain things, it'll initiate the healing process in some way. But I left with the impression that God was the one who did it for me. And what I did is kind of worked myself up into kind of like a dark place. But at the very end, he pulled me out of it. And it kind of just changed my outlook on what healing is that there is pain that can be healed, but there's also pain that will be there. And instead of me trying to fix it and trying to do certain things, that God has the power to pull me out of it and give me freedom. And I haven't really experienced it like that before. Usually I'm the type that kind of spirals in negativity until I go out and relapse. And that was definitely kind of like the situation I was experiencing, but it was one of the first experiences where he pulled me out of it before I was far too gone. So it was good. It left me with a really good impression on the power of God's healing.
The title, of course, is Made Whole, and a lot of times people focus on the healing moment. What I have found about inner turmoil is that you can have a key moment, and Jossie, you actually talked about this in a previous retreat, where there's intense prayer and there's a sense of being delivered and feeling really good, and then you walk away from those intense moments, and a lot of times there's also a quick letdown that comes after that. The reason I titled it Made Whole, and hopefully what we want in your experience, was a sense of getting tools, getting to a place where when I walk out of here, I better know how to live. I better know how to rest and do something, away from the retreat itself. Did either of you end up with, I'm going to call it a tool in the toolbox, or something that it's like, walking away, I now am approaching life this way versus the way I did going in? Jossie, you're shaking your head. What's something you walked away with?
More knowledge, just more knowledge about spirituality and how I'm more spiritually sensitive than most people, just because of, certain labels that people have. But I know I'm not those labels, and I can walk in Christ and use those to my abilities, my defects to my the abilities.
In the past, labels, I think you probably felt like an oddball. I hate to use a term like that, but you almost felt pushed into a corner. Whereas here, at least what I would hope is that you came out with a sense of identity of, okay, if God made me this way, there's actually a positive in that. Did you walk away with any positive sense about who you are?
Oh yeah, and I have more of a idea of what God created me to be, where He wants me to go with my life. So.
And I like that in terms of made whole, because the more we see about, oh, this is who I am, this is who God created me to be, that gives me a chance to have a new visualization, a new focus, and a new attempt to live life in a healthy way. And so that ends up being huge. Rafe, listening to you, I'm going to pick up on the idea of rest that I talked about a lot in the retreat. Coming out of the retreat, how will you rest in daily living? You've made daily living a fight, and then after it becomes a fight, at some point you wear down, and that's when relapses happen. Coming out of the retreat, how do you reshape that to where I'm actually able to rest, I'm actually able to be a different person?
Yes, it was a humbling experience because I like to be in control of my physical life and spiritual life. Um, I like to feel like I'm in control of it, and that is very exhausting. But to be able to just focus on what the Lord can do, working inside of me, just drawing upon His strength each day and resting in His presence is something I'm going to focus more on, because I can see how I work myself up, trying to control everything in my life, trying to control outcomes, healing, especially healing. I try to speed up the recovery process as quick as possible, and it's just my instinct, and I see how that can get me into some trouble and put me to a point of burnout. But yeah, after that retreat, I had to actually rest. It was so emotionally and spiritually charged that afterwards I did have to take a day and just nap through the afternoon a little bit, and then wake up and keep going. And I felt a lot better after I took that nap. But
Is there any idea, was there any activity in particular? It's like, okay, this idea really changed the way I thought, or this activity, this action, I think is going to help me going forward.
yes, during worship, there was a moment where I felt the Lord look at me, just felt His presence look upon me, and I felt an awareness that He had full awareness of who I am and the uniqueness He made me with. And it made me feel small. It made me feel like, wow, I really don't know who I am. He can teach me who I am. He can teach me how to live. But in that moment, I felt like um, I just felt an overwhelming shock of I don't even know what I'm doing, and I really need to be humble and let him do the work in me. And so that kind of like helped me have a tool in life to where I need to slow it down. I need to rest in his presence and just draw strength from him and just rely on him, on his word, proclaiming his word, and just doing everything I can to stay out of the snares of the devil and just focus on just submitting to him. That's all I have to do. And for me, that's very hard concept to grasp, is just submitting to him, just letting him do it. That's very hard concept, but this retreat helped open my eyes up to that.
Even listening to you, your tendency is just wrap it up, ratchet it up, really hit it hard, get after it. And so anything we can do to unwire that and get it slowed down into a softer, gentler place is going to help you live well on an ongoing basis. Well, thank you so much. It was interesting. Each of the people that volunteered for this really did have a little bit of that, wow, I need to see who I am. And so far, that's the common theme that we've really heard from each of them is I got a better insight into who I am, and I'm able to live better because of it. Thank you for both of you for joining us, and we will continue.
A few moments later.
Well, we were continuing with this special edition of HCU Livestream, talking a little bit about the Made Whole Retreat. Ian, it's so good to have you here. And what was your impression of the retreat?
Well, just to give a quick overview, coming into the program 6 months prior to coming in, I was having difficulty with my wife, and she had some mental health issues and some other unmentionable things. And it was very difficult, and it ended up leading to her ultimately passing away. And, honestly, I didn't know how I was going to handle the grief. I never really lost someone that close to me in my life. And God really just gave me a week prior to coming here, just an accelerated grief process. A good 5-6 days of just, guttural grief, just giving everything out to God, giving everything to him. And then it just kind of stopped. And it was kind of alarming, to be honest with you. I didn't know how I was going to handle the grief coming here. And then coming to the retreat, I really felt God wanting to get to the root of all the hard issues in my life. And, that was one of them. And honestly, God really just graciously took that from me, And I really checked myself deeply, to make sure that I wasn't just stuffing or in emotional shutdown. And I know when I'm in emotional shutdown, and I could see the way that I relate to people in the program, and I'm creating lasting relationships, friendships. So I'm not in emotional shutdown. And honestly, I can't reconcile it intellectually. It's really just a miracle from God, And when I went to the retreat, God gave me a really special gift. Saturday morning, he gave me a vision, and it was just a big, giant banquet hall, like a wedding hall, and it was empty. It was so beautiful, and all I see is Jesus and my wife, and she was wearing all white. Excuse me. She looked so beautiful, and they were dancing. It was just so wonderful. It was a gift. And Jesus just spoke to me. He looked at me, he turned and looked, and he said, I have my bride. And it felt like a transfer. She was my wife on earth. And he just took her into his arms, and he's like, I have her now. And I really needed that. I needed that transfer. I can't carry that. I have work to do here for God, and I need to move on with my life. So it was really a wonderful gift, and I got that at the retreat.
That's an amazing testimony. That's absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing that. That's incredibly personal and very powerful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Kimmy, I'm sure not that we're going to try to top. Okay, please, not that. But what was an overall impression that you had coming out of the retreat?
I just had an overwhelming sense of peace. I, for many years, have just been on edge. I mean, I've walked through this world just waiting for the bottom to drop out, you know? And I just really had this overwhelming Saturday night. We broke off into groups, and it was really cool. And at first, I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to expose myself, be vulnerable. And during the praying, we were all sitting around, and Pastor was there, and he was praying with us, you know, and it was just, I could feel this presence just like leave me, you know. It's just like it was getting plucked out of me. And so Sunday morning when I woke up, I had this sensation of pure calmness. I mean, like I've never felt before in my life, ever, ever. And that was God. That was God. And so, yeah, I got a lot out of it, and I realized that transfer is important, you know, and to transform.
It's interesting listening to the two of you. You both had major experiences. I always try to downplay that a little bit because I think the best thing you can get is what I call a long-term foundation, a different approach to life, tools for your toolbox. It's great that you had that, but sometimes people come in and they don't get that. And so the last thing you want to do is set people up for failure or, wow, what's wrong with me? I didn't get there. Was there anything in the retreat that you heard that was a teaching or maybe even an experience, but it really set you up for long term in terms of it changed my approach to life. It changed my thinking in a way that I think I will go forward more healthy. Ian, I'll let you jump in.
Absolutely. You did a teaching on emotions, will, intellect. I believe, I could be wrong, but the emotion piece was crucial because it was connected to presence, I noticed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why do I now I know why I feel shut off from God, because I literally go into emotional shutdown and I didn't realize the two were connected. It's like, of course I'm cut off from the presence of God. Of course I feel dry in my life, you know, in my relationship with God. It was really mind blowing, honestly. I've never heard that in my entire life.
And without trying to throw you under the bus, so to speak, but it is interesting because in order to be in control, you know, you've had a lot of trauma in your life, and so in order to be in control, one of the things you did was emotional shutdown, and you didn't realize that the emotional shutdown was actually impacting your spiritual experience, it sounds like.
100%.
So, well, that's cool. That's a neat one. That's a powerful one, and it's a nugget that you took out of there that was powerful. Kimmy, anything the same way that you would share with our listeners?
Another thing was real cool is when we did the chart 5 years, you know, of your life. And when I got home, I looked at that after I had filled it out while I was there, you know, and it like made perfect sense, you know, from 1 to 5, life is good, 5 to 10, you know, it's just, and as I got older, I could see that pattern. You know what I mean? I could see why I had struggles in those years and why I fell short. So
There is a science to the spiritual realm. Most people think that is contradictory. I use the phrase, all things work by spiritual authority. And as you're talking about that, the more you understand the science of the spiritual realm, it's really powerful. It does help you understand things like autism. It helps you understand things like emotional shutdown. And you're able to pull out of that and again, gain new tools. Not to really press things, but I think I'll just kind of open it up here at this point. What other comments would you like to make about the weekend? Either one of you, Ian, I think I'll let you go first.
Honestly, I think it's what everyone needed. I noticed the spiritual resistance in the beginning, but it's because it was something that was necessary. You know, those deep wounds that we carry and don't hand off to God, like God needs that. Like a gardener or a landscaper, like when they go and take weeds out, you need to take the root out or else the weed continues to grow. And it's getting to the root heart issues that we need to get to. If God can't get to those, then it's literally going to keep cycling in your life. Those things are going to keep coming up, and everyone needed it, you know. It's not always jumping up and down and getting excited. You know, there's some hard work that needs to be done that God really wants to do, because that'll accelerate our growth process in him.
Amen. Kimmy, any final comments from you?
Yeah, I mean, I got so much out of this retreat. I've been to the other retreats, and I was resistant. You know, I didn't open up as much as I did this time around. And yeah, I laid a lot of that down. I gave it to God, and I let him have it, because if I'm going to get better and I'm going to enjoy life more, there's things that I just have to let down. And that was definitely this retreat. So
We want to thank you for joining us on this special edition of HCU Livestream. We went back this time and highlighted our recent weekend retreat, the Made Whole retreat, and we have those about 3 times a year. We also do one-day retreats, Getting Better in One Day. In January, we actually started, that was our launch for the one-day retreats. We started with overcoming anxiety, and then in March, we did the retreat on overcoming a wounded spirit, and in July, our next one is overcoming abandonment. These intensive retreats are a great way to deal with some of the deep issues, and out of them comes some deeper teaching, which also will be posted on our HCU platform as we get these materials put together. It's our goal to be able to reach into your lives and to give you the tools to be able to touch the people around you and break through some of these deep struggle areas. Again, thank you for joining us, and pass it on. Let other people get a taste of what's going on with HCU Livestream.